Curious, since you've been to the fertility symposium, are you on board with women doing that? I call it make the next 100 days count. So you went to that conference. What's your thoughts now on people egg freezing and doing some preconception care for those 100 days before they do their egg retrieval?
Yeah, I firmly believe that there's a key to that. I did some of my own preparation. So I'm a multi-freezer. I froze it a couple times, and I've done it differently every single time. So the first time was like, oh, hurry up, we got to get you in. And I didn't have that like really 3 months, 90 days, 100 days to prepare. And we got an okay yield, but I was 33 at the time as well. And then the second time I knew that I was going to do this again, and really spent some hardcore time like upping my vitamin take, trying to eat healthy, pre-exercise, workouts, things of that nature. Made sure I did a lot of yoga, meditation. I was a lot more in tune. And then even this third time, I've been almost a year preparing for this. And it sounds crazy, but it's just my procedure was getting delayed as well. So that just happened on its own. And so I kept being like, okay, well then, I'm lowering, my drinking habits, and some of those lifestyle factors are super important. And it's hard to put your life on hold, and you don't have to do all of that. You can freeze without doing all these preparation. But I do think that if you're going to invest the cash and the resources to do this, that to make this time period kind of that moment where you are making yourself a temple and kind of like, preparing for this, could it impact your outcome exponentially. So I've even just seen like how the quality of eggs, like I had less eggs that didn't that were lost in the transition from being extracted to being frozen. So that could be contributed to the quality of eggs, and then it's also how you're stemmed. But I do think that there's a mind, body, spirit factor that I was kind of awakened to personally, and then reaffirmed at the conference.
That's great to hear. And the epigenetics, so the health blueprint of your child is based on your health those 3 to 4 months leading up to the egg retrieval. You mentioned something that I want to touch on then, because I think this is a question I have and the public has. You mentioned you did a couple of cycles to get yield. So to set expectations, it's very often not a one time to freeze eggs. Not all eggs will turn into embryos, which will turn into babies. So are you aware of, from your researching this, how many cycles or how many eggs you'd want to bank, even based on age? I believe there's some data on this, but I'm wondering if you have any insights on this from your research.
There's some amazing calculators out there. I like to call it egg math. I kind of coined that phrase in my own head, where like essentially that you got to start with understanding how many children you want. And you can always conceive naturally, but this is for like possibly baby number 2 or baby number 3. And the reason I've banked so many eggs, so I've just under 30 currently banked, and I'm working on another cycle for another round, is because if I want potentially 3 children, given that I've done this in my early 30s or mid 30s, I need at least 35 to 40 eggs to get that goal. If every 2 to 12% per egg turns into a live birth, if you know that statistic, then every dozen eggs or so, given the fact that you did that in your early 30s, could potentially turn into a live birth. But it also depends on the sperm factor. So you can't forget that, my DNA is only 50% of the equation. So depending on who I pick as a sperm donor or my future partner, that will dictate a lot of the success as well. So it's not just about my egg quality being great, but about the co-partner as well, which you were mentioning with Dr. Megan.
100%. It takes 2 to make a baby, and Dr. Paul Turek has discussed in some of the videos that we've shared that often poor embryo development is related to the male, and it's hard to detect that through the semen analysis that you can give life. But from the egg freezing perspective, it's really good to repeat this. You're saying 2 to 12% of the eggs could turn into babies.
A live birth, which is much different just an embryo because they might make it to day 5 blastocyst or day 3 blastocyst, which we hope they make it to day 5 because they're a stronger embryo. It doesn't mean that it will implant. You still have to have a great uterus. So it takes like 5 things for a perfect scenario, right? It takes a good egg, a good sperm, a healthy embryo, and then a great uterus. And all of those factors have to be in order to make the healthy baby. So it's not lost on me that this is a huge commitment to motherhood. And a lot of people aren't sure that they even want to be mothers. It's about giving yourself the most options and landscape that if you did want to become a mother, it wouldn't be extremely hard in order to do so. It's a numbers game. So you want to give yourself the best odds. And that's why we encourage multiple rounds and don't try to make this like a one set solution. What's interesting is in the early, like 2010, 2011, 2012, when egg freezing was first deemed as non-experimental and free to anyone, not just cancer patients or some life-threatening illness, most of the average age of women that were coming and I was speaking to were in the range of 37, 38, 39. So they had just heard about it and they were the ones that needed it the most because their life span of children, that window was getting smaller, and that window was closing biologically. But now, given that we're in 2019, the age actually has dropped, and I'm getting as young as 25-year-olds coming to me and asking questions about some of these basics. So, I think there's definitely a draw, and women really want to understand and wrap their head around this entire concept. What I find interesting is that the reason egg freezing even exists, because we've been freezing sperm for hundreds of years, it feels like, even though fertility is only 40 years old. It's definitely seen many different landscapes. But for egg freezing, it really came about because the Catholic Church didn't want to destroy embryos. And it really benefited everyone in general because now we don't have to worry about our current partner situation only having them to rely on to make embryos in order to conceive and become parents. Like now we can do something for ourselves as women and kind of catch up to the biology of men, which I think is very powerful.